the countdown here. I'll be right back. I got a headache. It is an Aries full moon coming up, so I guess that's standard. So we're seeing the clock here. And the moon will come into a conjunction. That's the transit on the outside. It's dynamic. On the inside is the fixed chart for the Aries full moon. Now just looking at charts like this helps you to understand how the energies transform, progress. But when you're just sitting there trying to analyze something, you're trying to analyze the static, like conceptualize it, echo response with the brain. Hold it in distinction. So knowing versus doing, they're not necessarily the same thing. It's about the spirit. So as you can see, there's a constant flow of energy. The moon is progressing. All the transits are progressing this way as cycles. Then everything else, from micro to macro, is progressing the opposite direction. It's like a digression, bringing the spirit into form. But by the time the spirit has been brought to form in the manifest world, the energy has already moved on to something different, ensuring the next manifest form. You know, when you're a baby, you grow, basically. You're progressing. So all of reality is like that. You can call it change. And it's what you focus on which determines whether it's a rising or a falling, a progression or a digression. And so generally what we focus on, you can see what that looks like by looking at a chart. You can see these different planetary bodies and the aspects. That combination tells you how an energy could be expressing in manifest form, and how that energy will change in the future. Now, I'm a neophyte with astrology. I've been studying for a little over 5 years now. But it's about practical application for me, so I'm in no rush. I'm just looking to grow. It's like, how does this knowledge become useful to me? That will keep me engaged in learning. But I see like the most powerful aspect of astrology that I've been able to hold is that it is dynamic language. And it's like it's like a code programming language that can fit into any system. System being ideology, philosophy, just a ways of thinking. So we know there's different types of ways of thinking in society. We got the pillars: republic, democracy. Then the sub-groups of those, the more Neolithic style, where people are gypsies, basically. And then you have the next evolution, the next cycle of people. The ones who are completely possessed by the rising and falling of culture, society, or those who are completely possessed by what that does to an individual as they find themselves in relation to something that's alien to them. So that's how I think that this language can be shared for anyone, really. Psychology's good, you know, learning all these different spiritual practices are good. But the difference between doing and knowing is the difference. So it's like, what knowledge can help with the doing? That's astrology. Timing. You know, you don't have to be right all the time, only when it counts. So if you can't get in tune with your own sense of power, your own intuitive knowing, then this system can help you to regroup and find ground. Can help you to understand cycles instead of the linear projection. Which is like the silent hubris, it's the ignorant possession. People that are deep in spirit are in that. But everyone goes through phases, so it's like, just because you're deep in spirit for 40 years doesn't mean you don't wake up. And by wake up, it's basically forget, release. Awareness, awareness. So it's like you're relieving yourself of wariness. We carry all these shadows and projections and defense mechanisms and loops. And then the loops, essentially, they need to play themselves out of you. And you can aid and help with that by learning about languages that give you words for meanings. That's what this is. Alright, so let's talk about the Aries full moon for a moment. Now, I don't profess to be the ultimate astrologer, and I choose my ignorance wisely. I like to do things at my own pace. So when I choose my ignorance wisely, I try not to get canon programmed idea consensus. I try and learn enough about what it is that I have been called to learn, and then I reach on my own into the next possibility of that progression, where I feel it would go. And then following that impulse, that intuitive pull, I find resonance with reality, symbology, the apophthegms, the world speaks. And when you know the world's speaking to you, then synchronicities and things come up, so you start to research certain things and you just get pulled into resonance with certain perspectives. So that's kind of how I learn. I feel we all have our ways that we got to figure out. Because the awareness becomes the release. Once you figure something out, you realize that you're dynamic and that you can be more than what that is. And then it makes you not have to try and control what that is, because there's processes and progressions. And sometimes you have to go all the way down. You have to dig to get out. Got to go within sometimes. But me, it's like I'm micro to macro. And I do have a lot of Aries energy, which is the final transformation of Virgo, which is a very micro, myopic, detailed, pulled into type of energy. So that expression in Aries can be anxiety, For me, the Aries archetype is I have a Piscean soul. So it's infused with the Aries, or it infuses the Aries spirit, essentially, is the potential, the void of possibility, which is Pisces. So I got a lot of Aries energy in my chart. Western tropical. I'm a micro to macro person. I feel Western tropical speaks through the psyche far better for me than any other system. But that's just me now. Maybe tomorrow I'll change it. Who knows? I'm just going with what feels right. But with Virgo being where Mercury is, there's all this Mercury energy being activated. I'll show you the fixed chart here, so you can see what I mean. So we got Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, of course, Venus. Now, I mean, all the players are here, basically. But let's just look here. I've got the Ptolemaic breakdown of the degrees on the outside wheel. But you can use whatever folklore speaks to you. You know, figure out which deities from your ancestors are tied to what star systems, and you can get an idea of which fixed stars are influenced with your folklore. And then you can break up the degrees yourself by your own folklore. And it can tell you influences that the other systems couldn't. But I digress. So, we've got the sun here 6 degrees opposing the moon, full moon. Think of the sun and the moon and the earth. Forget the psyop of the last 2,000 years. It's a very slow building one. You have to forget everything you think you know. And you have to go with what archetype speaks to you. That's how you go. So for me, I'm so old it's new type of energy. That's Aquarius squaring Taurus with Uranus there. Uranus is the Akashic field, the eternal memory. It holds everything, but we tend to focus on the negative, so it's like a big trauma signature in a chart for people. Mental trauma in particular, which is high mind essentially. I'm a Uranus ascendant opposing Mercury on my descendant. So it's in a T-square with Saturn on my MC. So it's kind of a theme that I'm focused on, tuned into. So Mercury, the messenger of the gods, Hermes Trismegistus, and the higher frequency, because it's a 5th dimensional energy and higher. It's like Uranus rules Aquarius, modern ruler, but co-rules with the sun, Saturn, because Saturn is about formation and castration. It controls. And so, you know, Isis and Horus, basically the Egyptian mysteries, you can get the Saturnian, Uranian, Venusian connection to how those planets play out archetypically, at least in this age. Maybe it will change in the future. But Uranus is the eternal life. It's the eternal death and rebirth. It has the memory of creation in it, and it keeps Saturn being reborn through Mercury and Venus. So Saturn, you know, devours his children, and then Zeus, and then Jupiter, Jupiter slays his father. So Jupiter is the grandson of Uranus. Zeus is the grandson. So, I mean, if you just look at these planets, like through these kind of mythological archetypes, it's not the definition. It's not the only way you can look at the energy, but it is a good language. So if you get mythology, if you figure out your own intuitive sense, and you can do that by studying your own birth chart and seeing where it is in your chart and how it relates to the rest of your existence through the dynamics in these aspects, then you can get a sense. But in any case, I digressed again. So we've got first decan, Libra, first decan, Aries. So when the moon is above the earth, so the earth isn't blocking the sunlight, then the creative spark within us, the spirit of reality, essentially is being opposed, or it's seeing the mirror of what emotions are in response to the rising experience, expression, feeling. And it's always a progression. So these are things seeded in us long ago, and they've come to a certain maturation where they bloom on full moons. It's like, are you on your path or aren't you? And it can look 10,001 different ways. Depends on where it is in your chart and how it aspects. And then you can look at your own personal cycles in relation to these different planets. If you got a good memory. If not, then it could just be new words for feelings you had no words for. That's why this language is powerful. I give people readings, and they realize, or they think that no one has ever understood them that way. Like it's their own personal experience. But I mean, it is your own personal experience. You know, how you experience it is going to be unique every time. I mean, you can have coffee every day and it can be different every day. The one universal feeling is at the bottom of it. So we're all tuning into these different things, and sometimes those are conditional to what we're developing, growing through, cultivating in spirit. So the psyche is transforming through all this, and it's transforming through experiences in the world, dynamics in your life, analysis, digestion, release, gaining knowledge, gaining experience. Feeling things, basically. Everything is a feeling, you know. But it's like, do we stay up here at the top? Do we try and break out of all of it? Aquarius and feelings, you know, it's the working transformation of Aquarius is in Cancer. And then that reaches into bringing heaven to earth. If you can tether to heaven, which is breaking Saturn's reign in Capricorn through Aquarius. That's how Virgo is influenced to help change whatever Capricorn's creating. Because when Virgo's in service to the self here, with Mercury in the Saturnian degrees, then it's up to your disposition. Are you good or bad? What do you do with that service? And sometimes you've given your whole life, you didn't realize it. You could have said no, you could have did different things, but you were so deep in your own loops, you didn't even know. And then you feel righteous indignation and like you want revenge and retribution and all this stuff, because you have to get that feeling out of yourself and the world around you so you can recognize it within and overcome it. Because no one else will ever be able to will ever be able to heal you. They can just show you the way. It's always back to the self, So this Saturn thing, it's like a very mature energy. We're still on the mercurial shadow path for this 2023 Virgo season. We've gone through a lot with Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde. We had the long-ass Mars retrograde, which is basically all this stuff happening. It's surgery for Mars here. In our own perceptions of our wounds, through limiting ourselves, censoring ourselves, holding ourselves back in contempt of tradition, other people's needs for control. And sometimes we find it was we're seeking some kind of gravity to bind ourselves to because we couldn't find ourselves in the world. And that's like the social contract conditions. That's those karmic dynamics between people. So resonance is about transmitting knowledge, information. Or it is the transfer of that. But the digestion takes a while. With Saturn. Mercury's fast though, so we've got the Moon and Jupiter's section of the degrees, the Sun and Saturn section of the degrees, Mars down here is in the mercurial section of the degrees. North or South node is in the Mercury section though. North node's in Mars. I mean, I'm just looking at the little, there's like mini mysteries in here. There's little paths you can follow to find different elements of change, dynamics. Now you see Mars and the South Node are transforming here at 22 degrees of Taurus. So, it's how we've seen relation, because we're realizing ourselves differently. It's what I'm possessed to say, basically. We learn through our ignorance and we release as we learn, and then we continue the cycle, whatever that is for you. Maybe your cycle is no cycle. Maybe it's complete chaos or spontaneity. Maybe it is living free. You don't need to think in terms of cycles if you can follow your pole with conviction. But oftentimes, if we don't know ourselves, we're caught up in the delusions of the world, so we become subjective objectification. Shit working out itself through us. Possession of psyche. Ancestral baggage. The gifts, the curse. I don't know, everything changes when you change, though. That's the only thing that's the same with all of us. So, advisement to me, it's valuable, but it's specific to the individual. the best thing I can do, or anyone can do, I feel, communally, is to live an example. One that isn't possessed by narration. One that's trying to find through releasing. That wu-wei stuff. So that's what this full moon speaks to me about. Everything that I say resonates with a seed. It's this: forget who you think you are and be who you might become. Or become who you might be. Whichever way you like to say it. The only static is the ever-flowing dynamic. That's when I realized, working in IT long ago. Actually, I think I realized it when I was little. I think I was 4. And I was laying down in bed with my mom. We had a lot of kids in the house, so I slept between my parents for the first few years. I just feel claustrophobic sometimes. But it was like, I was thinking and I said, numbers never end. And I remembered thinking of how big space was, and it would always make my stomach feel weird. So I would quit thinking about it. I realized the power of the mind to possess us. And then I seen it in other people because I was on guard for it. And because I could see it, I attracted it. That's how I know Saturn. That's how the ideas of karma, dharma were instinctual. It's why I could never find my hammer when I needed it, and then when I don't need it, there it is. That's handed down to me. I think that's a fatherly thing. But mothers can be fatherly as well. It just depends on the dynamics in the home. We can measure those things societally through statistics, and we can see how governments or different institutions intently or ignorantly helped create those situations, but we can also just see that that is part of life unfolding. The karma dharma thing, the cause effect. The Hegelian dialectic with ourselves. You can only see that trap when you faced it within yourself. It's like defeating all the enemies in the world, but they aren't the one within you. They're just the reminder. Alright, so Pallas Athena, new phase conjunction with this full moon. There might be some kind of an itch here. An impetus to do something in relation to using the power of your perception as you gain more clarity in real time. I feel like there's a rubber band energy. It's like ready to snap. But there's some kind of static in the picture. You can't see all the details. You can feel the details though with this series here. Trining, actually that grand water trine. So look to the fraternal energies, the history of what formed your character, your experiences, the people, religions, institutions, ideologies, philosophies. What experiences in the past wounded your spirit? How did it take away your power? How did you contribute to that? How did you give it away? Why? And then you realize it's part of a process. Judgment is only something we do when we look at statics. So you move with discernment through this growing awareness that's coming through the waters of Aquarius, your emotional intelligence informing the mind. Because you're seeing yourself differently now, you can allow for new language, new colors appearing. Now we see in this trine with Jupiter retrograde, so opportunities in reality will arise through your dynamics, through questioning your own values. This will come from other people and it will come from yourself, the expectations you allowed other people to cultivate for you, and the things that you expected of yourself just in order to maintain relation with certain types of people. So the repression of the service to self, the repression of your own grace here, you're starting to realize that you can claim some of that because you are changing. Your mind is growing. The eternal memory of all life as change is starting to set in. And so you're releasing as you learn. And this is a sextile between the growing love for the self, and that love is based on respecting, honoring the child within, the pure expression of who you are before the world tried to or did give you new coursework to work on. So that awareness is coming into a perfect sextile with Mars still catching up here. And it's going to be specifically in relation to your experiences, how that helped you to grow, to cultivate the fire, the pure fire of your expression. The spiritual transformation once Venus hits this working quincunx with Neptune. And that will be applying into your self-concept. So you come into relation with others in this world differently because you're coming into relation with your past as a new present for a potential future type of thing. And that square forces Pluto to change in relation to you rather than you in relation to it. So you can work with the awareness. If you're not processing feeling the stuff down or up, whatever. And if you got a lot of tension, like me in particular, I've been doing a lot of guitar and creating stuff. But I'm also digesting awareness, dropping knowledge. Because knowledge isn't static, it has to keep growing, otherwise it doesn't exist. It becomes contradictory, absolutions die. So just following your pull is, I feel, the best advisement for anyone in life. It's going to be the thing that benefits you in mind, body, and spirit. The expression will probably change many times as you seek what it takes to cultivate that, and it's probably going to be a progression of different things. But all in the end, it's going to be one thing, and it's a story. But it's the kind of story you hand down energetically, not written in books or spoken. It's a silent song. Which is why it's immortal. Because it's never been heard. But it's known. And that's what we all try and do. We're trying to recreate or bring melody to this hidden song. So with this Black Moon Lilith energy repressing, coming into this awareness, if you can apply that to something physical for your body, maybe changing your diet, changing a belief system, maybe get your genetics analyzed to see what is best for your type of blood, for your DNA, what type of diet. Try different things. Try Qigong or yoga or walking or exercise. Or if you exercise a lot, try doing something slow. Like some type of walking meditation or something. But if you can find a good creative way to apply the tension from this Jupiter to Black Moon Lilith square, you can bring that into form for your physical, mental, and spiritual health here. It's like the mind is right here, so the body is the mind. So maybe it's information too. Just whatever you've been repressing is going to be tense as it makes itself known to you. But it's transformation, it's strength, it's awareness. Spent a lot of time on that one. North Node will come into conjunction with Chiron, I believe, at 20 degrees. I mean, it's already in conjunction range. This is a balsamic phase conjunction. So it's like when you open the book and you read all the pages, it takes a long time. But when you're closing the book, that's it. So we're in a phase where a lot of stuff that's been going on for a long cycle could just hit all at once. It may not be in terms of pressure from the world or situations around you, but maybe the realization. Maybe it's crazy, mystical, metaphysical, synchronistic things. Could be a lot of different ways, probably a combination. But it's in relation to how we're seeing ourselves, so allow yourself to change. And if you can allow yourself to change, then you choose, well, what's the most awesome way to change? If I try and choose that with the brain, it messes me up, so I got to go with the heart. So how do I do that? I got to find this pull. What fulfills my spiritual need to be in this world? I worked hard for a long time because I needed to have a house and surroundings which put me at ease so I could get into that kind of next phase of whatever, finding spirit. And then I realized as I was there that a lot of the other things were cluttering up my ability to fall into spirit, I suppose. And it wasn't the physical things, it was what I was doing to worship whatever that was, to bring it into life. Working, 40 to 50 hours a week, whatever. It wasn't bad. Trust me, it was IT. That's a pretty good gig. It's just the monotony and the insanities which develop through metaphysical reach into these static systems which makes no sense. It's bizarre. It's all relational to people a lot of times. The wrong people are on a project, it's just going to be a nightmare. It's weird. Doesn't matter about the technical abilities, it's the energy of the people. When I would work with people, I always found people with the right energy, and then that's how I was able to network in a way. So in that way, when you follow your pole, you naturally find resonance with the world and people because your self-image is being transformed as you go, and it's a pure expression of some ignorant thing you're following rather than the known loops of the past which have ensnared us. So that's how ignorance is powerful in these times. That's how you can capitalize on the South Node in Libra. Doing old things in new ways. And the old thing doesn't have to be like, it can just be, I like to learn. I usually read. How about I travel this time? Or I don't like people, but I like to learn. How about I go around people and see what I can learn? It's like challenging yourself to express in a new way through old shit that we do. So if you don't feel this growing awareness within you, try and pull it out of you through challenging yourself with the mind and the world around you and in relation, doing things differently. We're just looking to get a link between symbology and awareness. And you could do it in many different ways. And that's the final transformation here. And you work this final transformation through cognition, mentally doing this Libra thing. Libra is very social, societal, relational. Because it squares the roots and what we do with that, and it opposes the potential sparks. So how do you unify this crap? You got to be in the mind to see all that stuff because it's 3D. It's in the here now. But because you tap into that doesn't mean you don't understand all the elements. You're trying to balance out between the emotions, the driving cardinal spiritual need to protect that, to bring it to fruition, and the balance between the purity of the self and the possession of the other. What's sacrificed here through Virgo, and for what in Scorpio? So there's a lot of responsibility here in Libra, but that's why the Libra point is 0 Libra. That's where the galactic center radiates. It's the reaching trine into Aquarius, the water bearer, the star card. So it's like balancing how much awareness does it have? Did it lose touch with what's valuable, or is it still connected to all this shit here? So that's what we work through with the Taurus archetype, but we all work through that in our own ways. It's just depending on the individual. And you can look at the houses and get a idea. I mean, you can like analyze a chart for 3 hours going through historical events that might have happened through different transits of an individual's life. Then you can look at their family's charts, like the mother and the father, lovers, brothers, sisters, kids, and you can get more nuanced details into how the psychology of the person is expressing in the world, how likely it is. And then when you got a how likely it is, you can emphasize with what kind of archetypical experience does that produce in the world. What happens when people lose loved ones or go through certain events? How does the psyche develop through that? So you can see that kind of stuff in this. But I mean, the one takeaway is we're always growing, we're always expanding, we're always learning. And some of the lessons take longer than others. Alright, well, I don't know, I hope that helped. It's kind of a different type of breakdown, I think. But if you are interested in a chart reading, just go to my website and schedule an appointment. There's a link in the description. If you just have general questions about anything, you can schedule an appointment too. And then if you want to learn this kind of stuff or share perspectives, because basically we all learn in our own ways, but we don't all have access to someone that understands how to read your ways. So I've got Mercury conjunct Chiron on my descendant, opposing Uranus on my ascendant, T-squaring Saturn on my MC. I've got outer planet aspects all retrograde to my moon in the 8th house conjunct Jupiter. Trining Pluto in my 12th and my IC in Aquarius. So I pull shit out of the ancestral realms. I don't know how. Basically it's Uranian, it's the eternal memory, But when we're in relation with people, the energy is exchanged. This is why I don't have many friends and contacts in life. It's not that I don't care or anything, it's just there's a certain amount of information that you can exchange with someone before you hit the point of no return, essentially, where the exchange is no longer beneficial for anyone. And so usually it's just what needs to be gained through relating with this person. And it's not a choice, it's a natural energetic resonance thing. And so naturally, when you don't resonate, you separate, and that's how life is. So, for that sake, for that fact, I have a hyper awareness. When I work with people one-on-one, it's just, that's it. One-on-one. Two minds create a third, and that's where Hermes Trismegistus is brought into the equation, and it channels into this Uranian field. And then two people begin to be the echo response to potential, because they are metaphorically throwing a harpoon into the void of potential, because there's an unknown between them. And they're pulling back what that is. And so when people have an intention, the spirit naturally is formed through that intention. So if you have questions about yourself, about your chart, about dynamics, your intention is known even though the words aren't present. So through relating, communicating, and learning, you gain a different perspective. That's what all this is about. So I've got a mentorship program too. And if you're interested, just go to my website and schedule an appointment. All right, well, thanks for watching, listening, and being.